Welcome, everybody. It's good to be back. I have with me my dear friend, Henry Finkelstein, hailing from Denver, Colorado. He's the founder and CEO of Cannabis Big Data. He's one of those smart, truly smart people, a little intimidating sometimes, and we're here to talk about big data. And when I started talking to Henry, I started to reflect on my career, my 30-year career in the industry. And I realized when I first started 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, outbound campaigns were on index cards, and we took stickers and we give it to an agent would make a call and then put on that disposition what happened, and then hand it back, and a tabulator would tabulate it. And that was the beginning of call center and data. And we've come a long way, and I would venture to say that our data gathering tools have far exceeded our ability to analyze and get insights from data. And I want to talk to you today, Henry, about specifically cannabis, big data, and the customer experience. I like to say in cannabis, if you have great, to quote my good friend 𝘂𝗽𝗱𝗁𝗀, if you have a great product, great packaging, great distribution, you found the right price point, congratulations, you're 30% of the way there. The rest is about customer experience. And that's how a product can differentiate itself. That's how Coke became Coke and Pepsi became Pepsi. Help us understand cannabis big data and how it plays a role in helping us understand and improve the customer experience.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, Dan, and looking forward to having this conversation. Data is a bit of an amorphous concept. It's everything and everywhere, and so often people say, oh, data is so important. You have to have data. You have to know what you're doing with your data. And look, we live and breathe data every day. My most often repeated phrase and mantra is that the only relevant data is actionable data. If we don't know what we're going to do with it, it's worse than useless. It's distracting. It will actually pull attention from what will move the needle in the business. And so when it relates to customers, this is a little bit of a tricky topic, because with customers, we see what they buy in the store, but that's usually where customer data ends. Maybe we have some marketing information around them if we have an email service provider or a text message campaign, but by and large, surveys, emails, those don't often get tied back to the actual customer record in the point of sale. So that whole customer journey, the whole loop, is a bit of an open question mark in the cannabis industry today.
Well, it's probably a little bit of a throwback because it did come from illegal roots and cash transactions in the dark alley. And we've come a little bit from that in cannabis to cash in most cases only. So it makes it very, very difficult to track. But what are some of the other areas in our business in the contact center area? We're extremely data rich. And that's why you and I hit it off immediately, because, you know, we're kind of like the Reese's peanut butter, you know. We're the peanut butter, you're the chocolate, or maybe the other way around, I'm not sure. We come with all this data because we're talking to customers. Help us understand the value of that and how you work with that and what insights you can get from that.
The key piece around customer data is customer relationships. By and large, a lot of the cannabis industry is moving towards more of a commodity market. You can get the same edibles store over store. You can get the same vape cartridges store over store. And yeah, there's some product variability, if particularly with vertically integrated, if they're having some of their own proprietary strains or proprietary products. But the vast majority of the product portfolio, you can buy somewhere else. So if I can go anywhere, why would I come to this store? And the answer is because in this store, I have a great experience. I have a relationship with the brand, with the people in the location. I like buying from you, specifically, Dan, your store. And so the whole game of data for the customer journey is understanding, relating to, and ultimately empowering the customer to have the experience that they seek, whether that's pain relief, whether that's socializing, the one glass of wine crowd in the cannabis industry, or whatever the case may be. It's all about understanding the customer, why they're coming in, what do they want, and getting that to them as quickly and efficiently as possible. Of course, in a profitable way so that the business can continue to grow and sustain. But that's really the key piece around customers, understanding them, connecting with them, and empowering them to have the experience and the reality that they seek from our brand.
I like to call closing the loop. So, what a customer, how would you know what a customer desires? It's very futuristic thinking. How do you know what I want? Help us understand in our world, we're talking to a customer and they call in and we have a 5-minute conversation with that customer. We gather, a couple hundred points of data, a couple points of reference. How do we take that gob of that conversation and all these drop downs and preferences and convert that into what you're describing? Because that's, I think, where everybody goes, wow, that sounds great, but how do you actually do that?
Yeah. Mastering customer data is all about mastering the basics. Like in any practice or any skill set, getting to that elite status is all about doing the small things, the basic things really well. I'm teaching this course on mastering retail analytics, and in that course we talk about the SCORE method. The SCORE method is 5 steps, SCORE, to walk through a particular analysis, a question, a data exercise to get to answers that actually move the needle, that actually have an impact on business decisions. And when we think about customers, we can start first and foremost by asking, are we talking about new customers or repeat customers? And that's the very first break in the logic tree of understanding and connecting with customers. The way that we can work with and talk to new customers is quite different actually than returning customers, because they have a very different context. They have a different awareness typically. And I mean both new to cannabis or new to our store. And so there are 2 different ways to think about that. But let's just walk through a SCORE example as it relates to customers, because I think that can be really illustrative. It can be very helpful to see the methodology in practice. Working with one of our customers in the past, we did an analysis for them on their customer base to try and understand where's the biggest gap. Where are they falling through the most in relation to their customers? And I warmly encourage every business to do a high-level customer segmentation exercise. Even just the data in the POS, in the point of sale software, is good enough for a first pass. And one of the things that we very quickly identified is that the people that come often are doing pretty well. The people that come sometimes are doing reasonably well. They keep coming back, they buy a lot, and so on. The place where there was the biggest gap was in first timers, one and dones. And I can tell you this is a very common trend.
Sure, and we all know Business Basics 101, that's extraordinarily expensive. We spend 10 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an old customer. So
that's exactly right. And not only do we have a greater chance of retaining the returning customer, but we also have their contact information. We have a way to connect with them. Not always loyalty point programs and so on. There are some nuances to the cannabis industry specifically about contact, but you have way more one and done customer emails and contact information than you do someone that's never been in your store. And so you and I talked in the past about this concept of a win-back campaign. This is where the data from call centers can be hugely valuable. And if we're walking through the SCORE methodology, the first step, S, is simplify. Why? That's the first question I would ask in the customer segment of one and done. Why? Why did you come once and not come back? And there are polite ways of asking that aren't so blunt and direct, but that's the core premise. Help us understand why and what can we do to get you to come back? And oftentimes, even that alone, reaching out and fostering that connection, is enough to restart the relationship and get them curious to come back in, let alone discounts, deals, promotions, other targeted messaging.
Yeah.
So I think that's the very
One of
first
my
step.
favorite lines, Henry, in sales is 90% of sales is staying in front of the prospect. And sometimes the messaging doesn't even matter, just get in front of them. But what you're saying is let's get in front of them with the messaging that's focused on that customer and
That's
their
exactly
desires.
right. Yep, that's exactly right. And so then that begs the next question, which you touched on, Dan, this idea of what are they looking for? Because some consumers are going for the best deals and they're super price conscious. They're just going to go anywhere where they get the best deal. Other folks really want the educational experience, the high touch, guided, curated, white glove experience. Some folks are looking for very specific products and they're going to go wherever those products exist, whatever the price may be. Some folks couldn't care less about the product, couldn't care less about the price, but they want an experience. They just want to sleep better. And that's their main problem. They just want someone to tell them what to put in their mouth so that they can sleep better. And each of those people might have come once and left, but the way we would get them coming back and ultimately inspiring them to become loyal customers that keep coming back really depends on their preference set and their desires. And that's the key to understand as part of this customer lifecycle journey. So the next step in the SCORE process, the C, is connect, connecting the data dots, connecting the information from the POS to surveys, to marketing campaigns, to call center data, to whatever other data is being collected around those individuals. Because if we see Henry comes in and he buys a particular product that's focused on sleep aid, and then we send a series of email campaigns and we see that Henry clicked on the one messaging sleep aids, we can start to eke out a narrative around what this particular individual is looking for and get more and more dialed in how we communicate to them and what we communicate to them and what channels we communicate to them to get them to come back, increasing recency, increasing frequency, and the monetary value when they are in the store. And so I think that's the key piece here. When I say the only relevant data is actionable data, I'm talking about making more money. Let's
Yeah.
not beat around the bush here, Dan. It's so great to know your customers and understand and connect with them and so on. But at the end of the day, we're running a business. And in running that business, we need to make money. So if the data isn't helping us make more money or solve problems in the business, usually leading to making more money, then let's not even go there. Let's not waste our time, money, energy talking about data. And this is coming from someone who our whole business is working with data. So I'll be the first to tell you that sometimes it's not worth it.
So actionable ROI driven data is what we want to focus on. And I think that's part of the problem when you say big data. It could be we have a gazillion bits of data in there, but maybe only 5% of it falls in that category that you just described. How do you cut the wheat to the chaff to find that actionable data?
Yeah,
ROI data.
that's a skill and an art. And that you're walking through our steps perfectly. That's the next step of the SCORE method. O is organize. Organize and observe the data in a way that is simple, intuitive, and actionable. And that leads directly into the R step, which is recommend next steps. How do we organize the information so that within 30 seconds, my boss knows exactly why I did this review, what it's telling us, and what we're supposed to do about it? And if we can't communicate the information in a way that leads to action, then that's the analyst's fault. That's the burden of telling a clear story is on the analyst. And if data doesn't, quote unquote, make sense, data can be really intimidating. It can be confusing. It can be convoluted. And I feel in my 5 years of working in the cannabis industry, there are folks that have some internal resistance to thinking about or working with data because it's confusing, because it's overwhelming, because there's just too much out there that doesn't make sense. And I want to be clear here and say, if it doesn't make sense, it's not your fault. That is not your shame. That is not your guilt. That is not your problem. It's the problem of whoever presented the information to you in a way that's confusing, unintuitive, convoluted, annoying, frustrating. If the data doesn't make sense instantly, that's not on you. It's on the person that showed you a crappy presentation that doesn't get at the heart of the matter. And that's the key. The heart of the matter is having some sort of actionable outcome from the data. And in this case, related to customers. And how do we inspire customers? The main levers that we're pulling for customers is, can we get them back again? Can we get them back more frequently? Can we get them to increase their average transaction value? Those are the main three financial levers that we're pulling for any
For a
customer.
retail cannabis location, absolutely, that's what you would want to focus on. And it might be different if it's a non-retail location, for example, for a branded product. They might be looking at different things because their customers aren't the end customer. Their end customers are the distributors and the dispensaries.
That's a good point. Yep, that's a really good point.
So it's just, I think the thing that you talk about that gets me so happy is when you say, if you don't get it, as a CEO, I got to tell you, it's just really refreshing to hear. If I don't get it, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many data presentations I've been in where I leave scratching my head, and I don't have a clear path. However, on the flip side of it, being in this business and gathering data, I've also had the opposite experience where the path is so friggin' clear and the action is so clear and our endpoint is so fast that we're able to get an ROI almost instantly. And so when you're able to have those successes, it's like a real rush. And when you learn the common components, it really does come down to the data hygiene and the organizing in a way that I think the biggest issue is only focusing the data that matters. But people get confused and they say, but there's all this other stuff out this. Yeah, and we might need it one day for something else. Let's hang on to it. But right now, we only want this. And I think that's been a big challenge for us with customers is sometimes they ask for the sky.
Yep, and that's why I started by saying the path to mastery is laid with the bricks of diligence on the simple things. There's no way we can scale up to artificial learning and artificial intelligence, machine learning, some of these like really big buzzy words when we can't do the simple arithmetic of the most basic data operations, the most basic insights, the most basic practices. Until we have that dialed and mastered, the rest of it is distracting. It's irrelevant and useless. It's distracting.
And I want to add that, you know, we've known each other now for a couple of years, and every data project I've gotten involved with always has an instant ROI for a customer. And that's because of the discipline we're talking about. That really doesn't exist in the marketplace for what I can see right now. But of all the customers you've worked with over your last 5 years in the industry, I would venture to say most of them had an instant ROI. That would be the rare exception where it wasn't successful. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think the customers that didn't have an instant ROI are the ones that picked up the tool and put it on a shelf and walked away. Surprise. If you're not using the tool,
you still have to do something.
Yep, exactly. It's not, data is a tool. It's not the answer. It's the path. So if I have a hammer and I have nails and I'm trying to build a house, but I never take a swing, well, I have the hammer, but I'm never going to build my house. And that's the key piece here. When we're thinking about how to use the data toolkit, one part of it is knowing which end is the business end of the hammer. You swing with the wrong end and you'll be sorely disappointed. But the other piece is having clarity on where we're trying to go, having a blueprint of what we're reaching for so that we are building to precision. And in our world, we call this data storybooks and data playbooks. Data storybooks are how do we tell the narrative of what's happening in the business using a data-driven methodology. And the data playbooks are how do we change that story? What are the specific action items? What are the next steps? What are the dates and deliverables? What are the people's problems and processes that can change that story? Look, if we're not telling a story, we're going to lose our audience. It's confusing, it's convoluted, it's frustrating, it's annoying. If we don't know how to change the story, then it's fatalistic. It's unpleasant, it's uninspiring, it's disempowering. It's only when we marry those two, how do we tell the story and how do we change the story, the data becomes a powerful toolkit.
Wow, that's it. I agree. And I'm thrilled to have my Reese's peanut butter cup thinking of you every time I eat it. I love listening to you talk about the power because I think it's a challenge that we have in the cannabis industry is it's a nascent industry we're in, and people are highly focused on blocking and tackling. It's very hard to think about the big story, the big picture. And I think that's what collectively Cannabis BPO and Cannabis Big Data bring to the table is the ability to help you drive that business to the next level. I'm thrilled to talk with you. I always love getting insights from you. Henry Finkelstein, Cannabis Big Data. I look forward to chatting again with you really soon.
It's been a pleasure, Dan.
Thanks.